Only the most curious and persistent people thrive in offensive security. How do I become a better hacker? How can I build and maintain my advantage over adversaries? And what's limiting my ability to think creatively? This podcast is for you if you're the kind who's always digging deeper for answers. Join me as I talk to some of the world's best offensive security pros about their work ethic, thinking, and real-world experiences. This is We Think We Know, a podcast from pentesttools.com. Prepare to be intrigued and inspired in this episode of We Think We Know, as we unravel some of the most interesting storylines in cybersecurity with Inti from Integrity. From his early days of script kiddie shenanigans to helping shape the landscape of bug bounty programs, Inti's story is a thrilling ride through the highs and lows of offensive security. It's also a testament to the transformative power of curiosity and ethical hacking. Inti not only sheds light on what happens when expectations meet reality, but he also shares his unique approach to problem solving and also shares some examples you can add to your own process. Join us as we explore the intricacies of bug bounties, the critical role of mindset in hacking, and how to turn every failure into a stepping stone to success. Let's get into it. Inti, welcome to the We Think We Know podcast. We're very excited to have you here. And I am very curious about a bunch of things from your present and from your past, and especially from, let's say, behind closed doors, things from your mindset and from your toolbox, which I cannot wait to unpack for our listeners.
Absolutely. Super happy to be here and talk about anything. So let's just jump into the conversation.
Let's do that. So you mentioned because I dug through some interviews, of course, before having this conversation. And at some point you mentioned that around 2011, but the bug bounty activity kind of at that stage in your life felt a bit like an assembly line. And I was wondering, what that looked like and what was the inflection point where that changed for you?
Okay, so in the very beginning, 2011, I was 16 years old then. I was working in a grocery store, and I absolutely hated that job. Sorry, Nancy, my former boss, if you're listening. I hated the job. I liked you, but I didn't really like stacking all the racks, etc. It was just not I wasn't good at it either. So when I saw that Google was coming with this program where you could get at the minimum $100, for me that was a lot of money. I was absolutely super intrigued, and I really wanted to do this, but I didn't know how to hack. So I taught myself cross-site scripting, which wasn't super hard to do because essentially there's tutorials everywhere on the internet even then. And I started copy-pasting payloads in anything that remotely looked like a Google website all the time. And I didn't know what it did. I didn't know how cross-site scripting worked. I just knew if I see a pop-up box, I may get some cash and I can finally quit my job. So I just started really spamming payloads everywhere. I was a script kiddie. I think most people started being a script kiddie. A lot of people don't really like to admit it, that even the most elite, best hackers, at a given point, you're just running scripts and trial and error. And a lot of my initial findings were invalid. But Google, and this was also a kick for me, they took time to explain to me. I don't think they had too much participate on their bug bounty program back then. They did take the time to explain to me why I was wrong and how I could improve. So gradually I understood, okay, if I can only execute cross-site scripting payload for myself and not for somebody else, that won't be valid. I need an attack scenario, and Google really allowed me to think like an attacker, and I'm still grateful for that. Just considering the time they spent, given how much they probably earn at Integrity, at Google, it probably costed them more than actually the bounties they ended up paying just by all the consultancy time, let's say. But the hacker that I am today, always putting the attack scenario first.
That's very cool. That's such a cool story. And I think that there's a very useful nugget of information there for companies that are just setting up their bug bounty program they may be more inclined to spend more time giving this kind of feedback. Of course, it depends on the company, but that's very generous of them to do so. And it highlights how many generous people there are in this industry willing to put in the time to, help out people who are just starting out. That's really nice to hear.
Absolutely. The best feeling you can have, and I see this because, we manage a big bounty platform over at Integrity. We try to put a lot of effort in our triage, even if people are consistently not really contributing to the programs, let's say. Of course, there's a limit. We do not want any of our customers to experience any noise. But our triage team will really try to train these people and explain to them, like, look, you're basically wasting your time. Take this time and spend that into reading these resources, doing these challenges, exercising yourself. And it's so fulfilling to then see people grow and actually start earning real money. That is just because you're investing in them in terms of education. Once they know it, they can replicate that, but also just giving that first bounty to them, sometimes it's life-changing. Some of these people, they come from areas where education is much less normal, or a given level of education, let's say, is much less normal as in the countries where we live. And just to be able to provide the education for free, thanks to this community, because there's so many free resources out there, that is amazing. And I don't think that is something that a lot of other industries have. Typically, you kind of have to pay for a grade to get somewhere. I don't think that is the case with ethical hacking. I never paid for a course. I never paid any premium subscription for a tool. Just did it myself, and it was entirely free.
That is one of the greatest things about the space. And even, this sharing of experiences and the stories and examples like you're doing now, this contributes as well so much to shaping not just what people know to do, so not just their skills and skill level, but also shaping their mindset and helping them form, let's say, some standards that are both healthy for them and are high enough in quality that they know what to pursue further in their development, not just as hackers, but as human beings overall, which I think that's one of the greatest things in this industry.
Yeah, I always say, and I'm not sure, I mean, this hasn't been scientifically proven, but hacking, in my opinion, is 80 to 90% using your mind and 10% using the tools or your actual computer keyboard. There's so many great tools out there, and you can find so many great vulnerabilities with them. But some people just expect by running a tool, you will get the juicy bugs. No, you have to learn how to master that tool, but also when to use it or when to tweak it. I use a lot of tools that I end up tweaking a little bit in the end, just because it fits my flow better. Because if everybody is conducting exactly the same tests, we're all just, and I say this with all respect for QA analysts, but I will feel like a QA analyst. And there's a reason why I didn't become a QA analyst. I cannot just go through a task of items to go through and just, compliance testing wise, just check everything that I've done. I need some level of creativity. I need to be able to really use my brain to invent scenarios that maybe are less common. And I need to be able to do that differently for every specific application. But that's just how my mind works. I know there's great hackers that are very focused on methodology. I know that they're super effective at making big bounties as well. So I think that's really what is so interesting about this industry. We have so many different people with different approaches, and that is what makes it so effective.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And thank you for highlighting that, especially because when it comes to offensive security, people who don't know exactly, let's say, the nuances in each type of activity tend to blend it all together and have a hard time maybe distinguishing between penetration testing and bot bounty hunting and red teaming and all of the other concepts that we are so familiar with. So when it comes to bug bounty hunting, in comparison or in relation to penetration testing, what do you think they have in common? What set of, let's say, behaviors and tactics do they share that are just as valuable in one, let's say, type of activity as it is in the other?
Listen, well, I think that penetration testing, of course, there's some more, I would say, rules attached to it. At the end of the day, you do have to write that report. So even if you don't find something, you may want to spice up your report with maybe some practical tips, best practices, etc. Typically in bug bounty, these things are not really being processed or triaged by the security assessment team. So it's bug bounty focuses a little bit more. I mean, the word itself incentivizes impact, whereas I think penetration testing leads more to compliance. Just knowing that somebody does it, just knowing that these endpoints have been covered. For bug bounty, what I really like, and I do think there's a huge overlap as well, because you can perfectly use all the pen testing techniques, apply them to bug bounty, and probably vice versa as well. There is a little bit more freedom in bug bounty, which is why I believe that a lot of pen testers, after their hours, maybe in their weekends, etc., they do bug bounty, because then you may have this one idea on a client that you would be like, this may work, but I may not have the time. I need to finish up this report by tomorrow. I need to make sure that I focus, that I get everything done. Well, bug bounty really allows you to put in that time. It's not always super helpful that you have so much time in bug bounty, because I've been in so many situations where I really literally spent the whole weekend, like from Friday afternoon to up until Monday morning, trying to crack something, and then it didn't happen. At the end of the day, you also feel like, okay, what did I accomplish here? But then I try to think, did I try something unusual that maybe at this application did not work, but that may work on a different application? So I try, even though if I don't find something, even though if I don't earn any bug bounties, I still have my notes. And there's been many times where a particular attack scenario that I had in mind for a specific app didn't work out. I could just recycle that for the next opportunity. So I try to see these things as an investment, because at the end of the day, for bug bounty, you don't get paid for your time, and for pen testing, you do get paid. I think that is the main difference.
Definitely one of the main differences, indeed. And I appreciate you highlighting, note taking and thinking, like building a body of knowledge, because this is what we do through our work. We build a body of knowledge that we can then improve, that eventually turns and we refine it into a system that gets us different results than other people. And I know that you focus a lot on this. You focus a lot on looking where no one else is looking, on getting different results by having a different approach, and by focusing a lot on scenarios. So how does that work? And what do you get from focusing on scenarios instead of looking for particular vulnerabilities or having, let's say, the approach, let's call it standard approach or common approach?
I think this stems from the nature of bug bounty, where at the end of the day, you will get paid for the impact. So you may have a super cool vulnerability where you can change some important data, but if that data doesn't relate to any other systems or is not used in a context where it actually super matters to the company in the broader perspective, let's say, it's not really worth a lot. Whereas in pen testing, if you are tasked to pen test a specific asset, typically, there's exceptions, of course, but typically you're not really tasked to see, okay, what is the broader impact on maybe other components as well, without outside of the scope of your assessment. Everybody loves bug bounty scopes that are extremely wide. So with that in mind, I try to impersonate two kinds of people. First thing I try to do is I try to get in the heads of the developer. I try to make this mental picture of this person that coded this application. And I try to literally be in the meeting where they decided to build that application. And I'm like, what kind of edge cases do they have in mind? What are their, who are their customers? What is important for their customers? And especially, what are the things that they may try to cut corners on because it's not super relevant to their business? Maybe they kind of need to have it for compliance reasons, but they wanted to spend at least effort into actually building the feature, because typically these critical bugs are not in the most focused areas, let's say, but it's more in the edge cases, where you have a customer that is too important, so you still build this feature for them, but it's excluded from the scope for other assessments, etc. And it kind of becomes this inheritance that needs to be there, but nobody really likes to maintain. That is where I look for. From the other perspective, I try to jump into the head of an attacker. And I really try to, I go really far into this, I try to darken the lights. I put on my hoodie and I really feel like a criminal hacker. Of course, I don't behave like one, but I put on some cool hip hop music, and I'll be gangster. Whenever I do this, my wife tends to mock me, and she says, "Do you have one of your episodes again?" I says, "Yes, I'm trying to find this cool bug." But for me, that really helps. That kind of role play into being the bad guy or the bad girl. I don't discriminate. So I then I try to look. Okay, what is something that an outsider may be on the look for, and then I try to go for the money scenario. Okay, how could I steal a little money for this company, because that's typically what's super important for the people. Data, what is some crucial data that maybe is not super clear to everybody, but what are their crown jewels, and then I try to go after them within the scope of the big bounty program. And very often it leads to something, not always to something that I was looking for. But if you challenge yourself to push the boundaries and to always try something new, you can never really lose, because at least you tried.
And you at least walked away with some helpful knowledge that, again, you can apply somewhere else. Those are two very helpful perspectives, especially because we don't often hear people in this space talk about how important it is to understand the mindset of developers and to understand how business makes decisions when it builds web apps, when it builds their infrastructure, when it decides who their providers are, and so on and so forth, because there is no perfect scenario in which a business will be able to do everything that it wants, even with the best intentions, to truly have everything in place. That's just...
And for that, I have a secret helper, and that is typically the job side of the company, because typically people put out jobs to solve a problem. And sometimes these problems are security problems in a way as well. If somebody's looking for, Salesforce security engineers, it may be that they, on their own Salesforce program, you have this cool, language that you can use within Salesforce, for example. Maybe they're looking for somebody to further secure that. Well, then I should be on the lookout for Salesforce instances that they deploy. Same with any other language, any other platform that they may be using. For me, browsing the job website is a very good idea about, okay, where does this actual company put their resources in? What is priority? What is focus? And especially where are they maybe understaffed? Because I will be the type of hacker that will take advantage of that, which is something that hackers do anyways. So
absolutely, it really is. And I appreciate how meticulous you are about this, because it can be difficult to understand and infer all of these things when you haven't necessarily worked in a corporate scenario, when you haven't been in these meetings and talked to all of these people and see how things happen. And I think that sometimes that may present a bit of a challenge for certain, perhaps younger or just people, younger hackers or hackers who are starting out, because they don't have that workplace experience. So this is a really helpful way to build some of that experience. What are some other ways in which they can connect to the reality of how things work inside a business?
Yeah, very good question. Let me first comment on what you said there, because I fully agree. Actually, in my scenario, I hack less than 5% of my time. I am in corporate meetings. We're building out a platform. My previous job, I worked at the radio station. I got the best ideas when I worked as a webmaster of a radio station, because my colleagues that were totally not into security sometimes were working with tools that maybe aren't super secure, or they were saying certain things that was like, maybe I could use this in one of my hacking exercises. And I do think that there's a problem that if you're hacking 100% of your time, you run out of ideas. Somebody who's an artist, that for me at least, hacking is a form of art. It is a creative, it is almost a sport. It's something creative. And if you do this all the time, eventually you will get tired of it. And you will, at least for me, I will lose my inspiration. So that is why for me, it's at least important to still do other stuff to get your inspiration from. For some people, this is doing sports. For other people, it is maybe rather than doing pentesting all the time, also having one day for research, or a day where you do something completely different, maybe a hackathon where you try to change the company, or meet people in areas where you haven't really explored, for example, sales. Lots of pen testers absolutely don't want to deal with the clients, but if you get the experience, please do try it, because you learn a lot from just talking to clients. Whenever I arrive at life hacking, the first thing I do is to talk to the client and ask them, where would you look for a vulnerability? I would say 9 out of 10, in the exact area that they point to, I do find a vulnerability. They know their systems better than I do. They kind of probably have a sense of where it smells, but they never either had the time because, of corporate reasons, or they were just like, they were waiting for the moment until somebody would ask them, do you think that is actually secure? And then you see this little light in their eyes that says, hey, wait a minute. Yeah, I would go and look there. And this is sometimes what people need in order to actually find security issues. So I would always say, like, try to get inspiration from all kinds of channels. There's a ton of YouTube channels as well that are senior security related. And I'm a web hacker. I'm diving into hardware hacking. I'm diving into hacking with lasers, stuff like that, simply because I'm interested in it. And it feels great to be a noob again. A lot of people are, once they reach some level of status, they're quite afraid to admit that they don't know everything. And I think that's a pity, because, yeah, that is limiting them. Like, you can be the best at everything. You have to do the cycle again. A lot of people only go through one cycle. They get a noob they become a noob, and then they become better, medium, senior, etc. But it's nice to be a junior again and just to learn, ask questions. And if you're upfront about this, some people that respect me from as a web hacker, but that are more experienced into hardware hacking, I probably ask them a dozen of absolutely stupid questions that they don't mind, because I'm just upfront, like, I know nothing about this. Explain me everything, if you have the time, let's go grab a coffee. And just always try to challenge yourself, always try to learn. That's a cool thing. This is one of the industries that you can never catch up. Never.
And that sometimes can feel overwhelming, but it's also a great thing because it's filled with possibility. It's filled with opportunities to try things, to be creative, to refocus your attention on something else when you feel maybe you've reached a plateau in a certain area, and then you can just start picking up something else, because how you learn actually gives you that opportunity to be able to learn and to master almost anything. And that's the great thing about it. But thank you particularly for mentioning how important human connection is and how important it is to meet people face to face, as uncomfortable as it is and as much as we don't want to do it sometimes. That really, really matters. And I think that we can really see that at live hacking events, like you mentioned, at conferences. We walk away with some of the best memories that we have. And we walk away with insights to which perhaps we wouldn't have paid as much attention if we would have read an article, listened to a podcast, or just did something else, simply because that in-person presence really matters. It's our biology speaking and making things really stick.
Yeah, fully agree. And also just like explaining something that you're struggling with in terms of like technology to somebody else is sometimes really part of the solution. Of course, in our industry, there's a lot of things that we can't talk about due to NDAs, but sometimes I will generalize or anonymize a problem and just, at the dinner table, talk about it to my wife, which I believe she still likes. I mean, or she's very good at pretending that she's listening, but no, I think that she's really listening to it. And, she will sometimes give very good suggestions that are maybe not always the solution, but she helps me look at a problem from a different way. And very often that I do find the actual solution, but it's so refreshing for your mind to just get out of the context and try to take a step back. A lot of people cannot take that step back. They just look at the problem. And like you say, tunnel vision is a very big issue. Things can be super overwhelming as well to people. And I do see that with bug bounty. So because that is still a difference between pen testing and bug bounty. Bug bounty can even come across, in my opinion, more overwhelming sometimes than pen testing, because the scope is endless. In pen testing, at the end of the day, sometimes you have a methodology, you have to take these steps. You can be creative, but of course, at the end of the day, you will know by the end of the week, by the end of this period, the assessments will be over. With bug bounty, it's really easy to go into the rabbit hole, spend a lot of time, and then not finding anything can be super overwhelming, because you never really know, should I stop now? You don't have your boss or your manager that will say, sorry, it's time to move on. We have to finish this report. My personal advice for people would be, even though the scope is huge, challenge yourself to limit the scope. When I start hacking on something that it has like the widest scope possible, for example, Google, how many applications do they even have? I will try to limit it to one application, but I'll go even further than that. I will try to really limit it to maybe a subset of functionalities. For example, today I want to find a bug in the what you see is what you get editor. And then, you have a very specific challenges. Very often people try something, it doesn't work immediately and they move on. But it can be very good to know, I first want to list all the potential scenarios I have in mind for this. And by limiting it, it will force you to be more creative, because normally, if you were to look at this from a normal pentest perspective, you will only spend a couple of minutes. But now, I have to spend at least a full day on this. But it's such a small functionality. It will force you to think more creatively about solutions, because when you're bored, when you don't know what to do, typically you come with the best solutions. If I go on vacation, first I do all the, crazy activities, skiing, water sports, whatever. But at the end of my vacation, I always need at least 3 days to do absolutely nothing, not even reading a book, just sitting there, looking ahead of me, no requirements, nothing. I can do stuff if I want to, but that is the most refreshing. And then when I go back to work, I have ideas again. Automatically, if you feel bored, you will start. I don't know what it activates in your mind, but it activates something. People should be more bored often.
Agreed.
We try to fill in the gap by watching a series, by watching television, but that is not being bored. We, just go sit in your couch and do nothing. That's how you become a hacker.
Excellent. Here's some excellent life advice.
Well,
you sometimes need to do nothing so you can get to somewhere, to the next big thing. And that is so, so true, because we don't give our brains enough of a time to decompress, to process information, to just make those creative connections that cannot be forced. We just need time to think over things. And that's such an underrated skill to cultivate, especially because in cybersecurity, and perhaps even more so in bug bounty hacking, there's this idea of instant gratification, and so many people want it. They want to grow now. They want to know the thing now. They want to learn things. They want to get their bounties. They want to get all of the ego boosting, things that come with that experience. And that lack of patience can lead to, just like you mentioned, moving on to the next thing, not giving it enough time, not going deep enough, not spending time thinking of, potential scenarios and so on and so forth, which leads to frustration and many other things. So I was wondering, how can you develop in a bug bounty hunting scenario? How can you develop these essential, I feel like they're essential life skills of sitting with discomfort, of persevering, which can then translate into other areas of your life as well, or into, some other career layers that you want to add to your, journey as a hacker?
I think it's important for everybody to define success in the right way at every stage of your cycle. Everybody can be successful if it's you who determines what success looks like. The problem is that people go on social media and they say, okay, I want to get $1 million bounty because some other guy that has been, or girl that has been doing this for over 10 years has achieved that and they don't see all their failures, I can be super grateful for, or I try to be grateful for a failure, because like I said before, sometimes you tested something really cool and you can just imagine that it worked. However that application was coded that you're testing is outside of your control. Psychologists call this like the circle of influence, but it's really applicable for penetration testing as well. Like how well the developers did their job, you don't have that, you have no control over that. But if you at least tried something that you believe was cool, or if you at least try to come up with one creative solution, or even, in the report writing, if you try to find a best practice or give the best possible advice to a customer, that can also be a success. The success doesn't have to be that you have to find a critical in every single application, because there may not be a critical, or it may not be possible with the time granted. So yeah, people get stressed, and I understand why. But I would say that to answer that question, my advice would be to try. I know it's hard, but to try to define success yourself and not try to realize that, whatever the rest is sharing, nobody is sharing their failures. It's, by the way, something that we recently was quite a cool experience. But to change during a life hacking event, we had this bonus, so it was a multi-day life hacking event, and we would pay $1,000 to somebody that would share anything. Like it could be a failure, it could be something they learned that day. So we had a daily bonus for that, and people really loved the idea, because then they knew, okay, I'm going to try this. If it doesn't work, I'm just sharing this with my colleagues. I can still get paid for my failure. And this whole, failing forward approach, where people just share their failures as well, turned out to be super successful, because you had two people that failed at the same thing, but when they combined the knowledge of each other's failings, they eventually still found a bug. They found something, and we need to share what didn't work more, because if we do that, it ironically will result in more vulnerabilities found. It's that collaboration aspect that stays super important.
And making it safe, creating that safe space for people to actually share their failures, such an important thing, because we tend to glorify results in this industry, like many other industries do as well. It's not something that's particular to offensive security. But by doing so, we may create unrealistic expectations and may not make it as comfortable for people to admit that they come from humble backgrounds, that they have the same challenges. Everyone has the same challenges on a fundamental level, in the sense that we're all humans, we're all imperfect, and that's how it works. And that's why we have a job. And so yay for that. Not a bad thing to be vulnerable. Something that I wanted to ask, particularly on the topic of, the let's say the fallibility aspect of human nature, that's where some claims in the industry come in and say, we'll just automate everything. So human errors can't do, because humans can cover everything. So we'll just automate. Let's just automate things and be done with all of the humanity and its imperfection. But even though we know that blanket automation is entirely bogus and definitely not workable, sometimes not even automating certain stages end-to-end work for the same reason, because it takes a lot of nuance and craft in this industry. And I was wondering, what's your take on that? And how do you relate to automation? How do you use it? And where do you feel its efficiency actually ends and starts working against you?
Yeah, so I really believe that any tool can be useful as long as you use it in the right way. And automation itself, unless it's, being powered by a higher deity or whatever, is never really going to be super successful. Even, and this is a bold statement, even with the AI that we have right now, I wouldn't say that AI is creative. AI is able to predict what we will think of as creative. It will be able to create a lot of iterations about all of our art combined, but it will not come up with new stuff. It doesn't happen. It will make us think that it came up with new stuff, but it currently can't even, or most of these algorithms can't even draw figures. But if you look at how they would browse the web or how they would act as an attacker, what you do see, and this is certainly a trend, is that we are heavily protecting the web against robots now. And I know, we had the annoying "I'm not a robot" captchas for the past, what was it, like 20 years maybe now? But it will get worse for us as humans in the future, because as these things start getting better at solving those, we're going to come at a point where there's going to be so much processes in order to prove that we're a human, that automated black box testing will also probably be more challenging. So we will need to invest more in tools, or tool whitelisting, I would say, to make sure that, there's exceptions. But the cool thing is, the moment you start creating exceptions for tools, then the hacker's going. And the moment that we will, and I have no doubt that there will be AIs capable of simulating like an APT, or any other, malicious actor, they will be able to do that, yes. But and that is what I like about the industry. Now you have so many papers on how we can actually beat AI. And typically it's in the most stupid ways possible that a human can even fool. But this AI, because it's trained in a certain way, you can actually fool them with it. So I'm not afraid of AI. I'm not afraid of overly automating stuff. I think that we will always need people. I do embrace automation, because it can help us get rid of the iterative stuff, things that we have to do over and over and over again, and of the boring stuff. I would love to just come up with ideas all the time, just be in my shower and tell my personal AI, hey, I have this idea, let's now do this. I would pay a lot of money for that, because now I don't have to go through all the data, test every single website. The hackers of the future are the hackers that will just probably tell their automation, tell their AIs, whatever we will have by then, this is a great idea. And those will be ideas, and I hope to be, or maybe I don't hope to be proven wrong at this one, but I do think I'm right. It will take a very, very long time, if not maybe it's impossible, that an AI will come up with something that we actually will believe is creative, because an AI is always powered by data. Humans are, in my opinion, perfectly capable of coming up with completely new ideas, new methodologies, new techniques, without the data being present. So, yeah.
I love that flavor of optimism. We need a lot more of that in this industry, because we tend to see, and our job is to look for all of the things that go wrong. So that can easily turn into a confirmation bias, where everything we see has something wrong with it. Because when you only have a hammer, you tend to see nails everywhere. So definitely.
Yeah. The cool thing is, and I compared this with Transformers, like the movie. Like, all right, let's say that the other party now has this terrible automation setup and terrible AI setup that can attack millions of systems at the same time. Well, then we, the defenders, will also have those capabilities. We will also have these tools. And at the end of the day, it will be their tools fighting against our tools. So you create it's another league, but we will be the puppeteers then. So, our job will not be gone. We will need to continuously upgrade our tools and, update our AI systems in order to outsmart theirs. So, things just shift, but they will keep people have been exploiting vulnerabilities all the time. There's been vulnerabilities since the beginning of humankind, and there will continue to be vulnerabilities in every single system, including AI, for many, many, many years.
I absolutely believe that as well. And I also believe that there are more defenders than there are attackers, because humans, essentially, they want to do good. They want to protect. And once they have a taste of what it's like to do something good while also having fun, while also learning and getting paid for it, then that is a powerful experience that shows you that, hey, this is actually a career I can build. This is actually a journey I can sign up for. And I do have this, at the end of the day, people matter more than computers. And I know that I'm helping, that my work kind of helps someone down the line, and making that connection, I feel like is super powerful. And the fact that bug bounty programs such as the one that you're running brings people into this experience, helps create a lot more potential defenders, or people who help defenders, people in offensive security, whose essential job also translate to actually, helping someone boost their defenses. So that's a really nice way to see that Avengers Assemble kind of sentiment.
Yeah. Yeah, it's only exciting. Yeah. And I also, I believe we haven't even started yet. I fully agree with your with what you're saying there, that there's probably already much more defenders than there's malicious actors. I would argue that maybe 10, 15 years ago, that was different because the regulations have very much changed since then. When I started, at least I couldn't find anything on it on the internet. When I was like 14, 15 years old, there was very little that you could actually do as an ethical hacker. Like ethical hacking itself didn't really exist. Okay, you had pen testers, you had consultancy, but it didn't sound as cool. I wanted to hack. And back then I didn't know that pen testers were also just hacking, but this whole concept of ethical hacking had so much evolved over the past years that in the beginning you had to hone your skills on custom labs and challenges that were fake but pretended to be real. But these were these environments like try hack me, like try hack the site, and etc. But right now you have so many platforms like stuff like Hack the Box, but you also have, and at least this is the case in Belgium, you can, as a Belgian, for example, recently you can just hack any website, anything that is on Belgian ground, legally, as long as you act ethically. So you don't even need permission. If you report it to the company, to the government, and adhere to a set of ethical hacking rules, you can just do it. So the scope is literally start.be, which is something that I know other countries are looking into as well. And then if you want to learn how to hack, you can start by, securing your local hospital or stuff like that. And then I believe that for me, it was, okay, the money for bug bounty was nice, but just the feeling as a 16-year-old, like I'm helping Google right now, or I'm helping even closer at home, companies that I really care about, that have so much important data, that is worth more than any bug bounty for me.
That is so cool that this is happening on a government level, and I hope that this happens more, because we definitely need this kind of brought into a place of, hey, this is how we do things around here. This is normal. This is not a malicious behavior. And thank goodness that people who have been advocating for this for so many years are finally getting results, and they're finally creating this change where the authorities understand that we need to enlist people's help so we can have this overall, improvement in security, especially for the parts of society which are the most vulnerable. So I really love that example. And
absolutely. Everybody should be a hacker. Think about it. If everybody were a hacker, the internet would be a safer place, ironically.
It is, and the world that depends on it, not so much. To wrap up our conversation, I thought we might just go into a bit something that's really exciting for you right now, something that captivates your imagination and your energy. What is that?
Good question. I try to do, and I can't reveal a lot yet, but I try to do a yearly research topic. So I nerd slide myself. I give myself a challenge, like I really want to learn more about this. And I start nerd sniping, and I try to learn everything about it. I read all the internet standards written 20, 30 years ago. And right now, I think I'm onto something, and it's starting to, pay the first results. It starts appearing in the wild, actual, attack scenarios that I could use on bug bounty customers. And only recently I got the first payout for it. So that is something really cool, because it starts from research. So I'm having fun. It's not really tied to any assessment. And then when you see your baby actually making money on the internet and being especially helpful for these companies, a new attack scenario that they haven't seen before, I think that is super cool. And I hope to one day be able to bring that to a conference in a presentation. But we're still in the phase, will this end up working or not? So I won't reveal too much. But other than that, something that I also really enjoy doing is making cybersecurity accessible to a wider audience. And I'm preparing this magic show that I will tour with in my home country. There's not really a translation, but I guess the best translation would be magic tricks. But then there's the word hacking is somewhere in it, so magic tricks. But it doesn't really sound well in English. It does sound well in Dutch. And I've prepared this whole magic show. But the clue is that the magic tricks are not actual illusions, but they're actual hacks. So I'm trying to combine my passion for magic with my passion for technology, and it's going on air in May, and I'm really looking forward to it because, again, I'm surrounding myself with an audience that comes to the show that doesn't always know anything about cybersecurity. And when I talk to them after the show, it's just super good to hear their responses to the show, what they thought that they were expecting, but also just to learn from them. So it's my way of connecting with people, talking about cybersecurity, but still connecting with people that are maybe outside the whole community of our cybersecurity world. So yeah, really looking forward to that and spending almost every night, every weekend into preparing these magic tricks. So
that sounds really exciting, and I hope you put that show on the road someday so
yeah,
other people can see it outside of the Netherlands as well. But that sounds very entertaining.
I will. There will be an English version. Let me just try this in Dutch, and then I'll see what I can do.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for sharing all of this today, Inti. This was really interesting, and there are so many things that are like instantly actionable for people who want to try something else, for people who want to challenge themselves, and for people who want to see, what it looks like when you actually do the work and when you actually, see what it takes to persevere, because that makes all the difference at the end of the day. So thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Ever wondered how deep the rabbit hole goes in the world of ethical hacking? Well, we're still falling, and we're dragging you along with us, one question at a time. Thanks for wandering through this maze with us as we tackle the nitty-gritty, flip misconceptions on their heads, and maybe, just maybe, made you rethink some of the things that are important to you. This has been the We Think We Know podcast by pentesttools.com. And before I sign off, keep this in mind. There's always a backdoor, or at the very least, a sneaky side entrance. See you next time.